Alright.
Less than 30 seconds now in regulation. Could this take extra time? 16 seconds. Here's Dyal. Send it up at the point, J. Lalu. Call midget now, but Matt, 6 seconds, 5, Dalfan coming out. He gets around in 2 seconds. He's got to do it quick. Shoot, the scores, 1 second left.
Okay. Alright, the intro's good. We're good. Oh my goodness. Oh, what a mess of an opening this has been.
Welcome!
Yeah, so that was interesting. We got you in there a little bit early there before the intro and everything. Yeah, it was good.
Well,
So we
nice.
get to,
Was
get
it we
to
talking about bad?
hear your voice or something. I don't know. Maybe I'll cut it off or something. I don't know. Whatever. Oh my goodness. Alright, so we're here with a very improv episode of the Dick Dyal pile, as I'll refer to it this time.
Forecheck, and it's the Dick Dyal pile this time?
Yeah, well, yeah, I still kind of like that one the best. I just like the way it rhymes. We're just not really, it's not really much of a pile. Like, do you feel me there? Like, what is it a pile of? It's a pile of nothing. It's a pile of disappointment. That's what it is.
I mean, today's episode is, but normally it's good.
Is it? Is it?
Yeah.
Alright. Well, at least we believe that, right?
If we believe, it's all that matters.
Alright. I suppose so. Alright, so we'll very briefly go over the agenda here. Pretty much going to be the same as last week. Nothing overly incredible has happened, so we'll go through, look at it's not really trades, I guess it's one trade, talk briefly about that. We'll look at the games that happened this past week, how the standings look right now, look at each team individually, and then we'll get to the predictions, which, what did we say we're going to call the prediction segment now?
The Foreskin Forecast.
Okay, alright, I'm going to need some
Hosted
intro
by-
music. You gotta get some Weather
Oh.
Channel intro for that.
I like that.
Be great.
Like descending.
Oh boy. Okay. So yeah, so this is about as improv as you can get. I don't think I've done as little, or I don't think I've ever done as little prep for a show as I did for this one. So it's a little bit disappointing. I'm gonna blame Fallout 4 though. We're gonna go there.
I'm gonna blame Victoria 2 and World War, so that's my excuse. That's
Those
my
are two
scapegoat.
terrible games though.
Yo, fuck you.
I mean, if you want
What,
to,
Fallout
again,
4 or
after this
Victoria
is
2?
over. Yeah, definitely Fallout 4.
Yeah, Fallout 4's god awful.
That should be
I
on
don't
the
know why you guys
news,
do it.
honestly. Fallout 4 is out. Everyone hype. The game is amazing. If you're thinking about getting it and you haven't yet, you definitely should. I've spent like 20 something hours on it in the 3 days I've had it. It's been amazing. So, alright, we'll get into this. So I can pull up the schedule here. We'll look at what went down last week. Hey, we did it. Okay. So, this
Is the
past
Foreskin
week,
Forecast up, or is this the last week's Foreskin Forecast?
it is up. We're good. We're doing alright so far. Nothing horribly wrong, right?
I mean, I'm not looking at chat right now, but chat's talking about those attacks in France. Rest in peace, France.
Oh, true. Shout out to anyone who is dead in France.
Shout out to my homies in France who are currently rest in peace.
But
yeah,
seriously,
it's
that's pretty
god-awful.
crazy. That's pretty
It's
crazy.
god-awful.
That's pretty terrible. I heard there's like 60 dead or something like that already.
It's 140 dead. The
Oh, is it
fucking
really
place.
now?
Oh, it's worse.
Jesus.
It's way worse than it was.
Well, hopefully we can take general public's mind off of that for a little bit. Rest in peace to Evcob and his brethren. Evcob's probably dead, even though he doesn't live in France. Probably dead.
He lives Quebec, might as well be France.
Yeah, pretty much. They all speak French anyway. So anyway, okay. So let's talk about what went down this week. So on Sunday, we saw Chicago get their second win of the season, I think, or their third win, second or third, over Quebec, which didn't have Matt. It was actually Quebec's arguably their best showing of the season without Matt that game. They lost 7-5. They were able to score a lot. I think Ottawa had 4 goals in that game or something ridiculous like that. So they tried their best that they could, but unfortunately Chicago was too good for them in that situation. And the game after that, we saw another fairly high scoring game, but that was actually the lowest scoring game of the night at 7 combined goals, which Dallas won 5-2 over Philly, handing Philly their first loss of the season, stopping their 6-0 run like they did last season. And then Pittsburgh beat Tampa in a very one-sided affair, 7-2. And I think it was 7-1 too in the third. I think they scored Tampa scored the last goal at the very end of the game. Or actually, no, that wouldn't be possible because it would have been a mercy. So something like that. It was lopsided for the entire game. Is really the point I'm trying to get at there. So pretty much the same deal with Chicago and Quebec. I think that game was close for the first period, and then Chicago started to peel away during the second. And then the Philly-Dallas game got out of hand in the first period, and Philly was never able to really claw back. Which brings us to Tuesday, where Pittsburgh handed Quebec yet another loss, 5-1. Again, no Matt there. I believe Timu was there for Pittsburgh that game, so certainly you could argue makes a difference for Pittsburgh, but continued their run and put them on their first winning streak of the season, 2-game winning streak. Not bad, not bad. Which would later be ended on Thursday. So we're the streak killers so far this week.
Are we?
Yeah. Except for Tampa. We didn't. If we had lost to Tampa, we would have killed every streak during this week. But instead we
Thankfully we
beat
didn't
Tampa.
lose Tampa.
Well, yeah, I mean that wouldn't have been a great streak to end, I guess, for our sake, right? We don't want to end their losing streak. Anyway, so 6-1 score of Philly over Chicago, a game that we predicted to be really close, actually. And I think did we both predict? I'll look at it later, but I think we might have both predicted Chicago to beat Philly in that game.
I think we did. I don't know if we did.
Well, at least one of us did. At least, yeah, when we get there, at least one of us did.
I think I did.
But yeah, we definitely did not expect to see a 6-1 lopsided victory there. And then Dallas beat Tampa Bay, handing Tampa Bay yet another one-sided loss. So very rough start for both Tampa Bay and Quebec so far this season, and their woes would continue on Thursday as Quebec lost 3-2 against Philly, which actually you got to give Quebec some credit there. Again, without Matt, they were without Matt all 3 games this week. Put up a very good showing against what has been the #1 team in the league all season long, only holding them to 3 goals and scoring 2 of their own to keep it a 1-goal game is pretty legit on its own. Philly did have a 3-0 lead at one point in that game, and they almost blew that lead in the third, where Quebec scored both their goals in the third. Pretty sure that's what happened. Quebec scores both in the third. But they couldn't quite complete the comeback to bring it to OT and ultimately fell in regulation. We had our second mercy game, I think, of the season, where Chicago mercied Tampa. May have actually been our first. So Tampa this week beat Quebec 3-0, then lost 7-2 and 7-1 in their following 2 games to Chicago and to Pittsburgh, and 6-2 to Dallas. Sorry. So yeah, it was that 3-0 win was the end of week 1. So this week Tampa was 7-2 loss, 6-2 loss, 7-1 loss. So we'll have a lot to talk about when we get to them. And then the final game of the week was Pittsburgh versus Dallas, which was a game for second place in the end. Winner would have moved to second place, loser to third or fourth. No, loser would have gone to fourth because of Chicago's win. So very close game. Dick Doug scored the game-winning goal with like a minute left in the third.
Yeah.
So shout out to Dick Doug. Rip Proper. I guess Proper had some serious ping issues. So I know there was some issues there, but it was a very tight game, very well played game from both sides, honestly, on the whole. So be looking forward to seeing some more matchups between those two teams, just because they're one of the only matchups so far this season that's actually been close. So that's one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about here now, is like looking at this week especially, and there were only 2 games that were decided by less than 3 goals, which were the 2 1-goal games on Thursday. Every other game was decided by 3 or more goals, which is insane. Yeah, very, very, like every game was one-sided, especially you look at Tuesday and Sunday in particular. Like Tuesday, the lowest margin of victory, or margin of defeat, however you want to look at it, was Dallas only winning by 4 over Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
And Quebec and Pittsburgh are tied at that. Pittsburgh won by 4 as well. So, but only winning by 4. It's not exactly a close scoreline. So, what do you think has been the cause of these games being so just heavily swayed in one direction or the other?
It's really early into the season. Well, it's not early, but it's like, what is it? It's week 2, so teams are still trying to gel for this, like for the season, and they got ping issues here. You got teams like arguably not playing up to their full potential and then not playing well. You have attendance issues. It's been a whole combo of it's been a huge conglomeration of issues, and it's. No one's going. I think a lot of people came into the season thinking it was going to be really competitive and the team's going to be close in the standings. But as we've seen every season, there's always at least one team that languishes at the bottom, and I think we haven't figured out that exact team, what that team's going to be for this season. But we're coming close to it, and we're starting to see signs of that team, of the teams that are going to be at the bottom.
Yeah, for sure. I think the big thing right now for me is sort of, you alluded to it a little bit there, where it takes a while for teams to really gel together and figure out how to play together. There's certain cases where that doesn't necessarily hold true. Like you look at Philly as an example, who has 3 of the same 4 skaters they had last season. And if you count Quoof, even though he hasn't played any games yet, they have 4 out of 4 skaters that are the same. They've had Ace playing right now because Quoof hasn't been here. I don't know whether or not that's going to maintain the way they're going to run through it. We'll get into a little bit more with Philly, but they're really the only team that's coming into it with a lineup that is so consistent that they're used to playing together. Some people would probably try to argue Dallas, but I'd argue that we didn't have Dalfan playing with us for a lot of last season. So it really is just you and I that know how to play together, and then everyone else is sort of learning the system, and we're learning how to play with them. So there's a lot of changes that are going to happen. There's teams that are going to fall off. There's teams that are going to pick it up. I think, generally speaking, offense is usually a bit easier to figure out than team defense is. I think the defensive situations and what you're supposed to do in each situation really depends on the style of your teammates. And I think it's a lot harder to develop that quickly, especially where most teams in the LHL don't actually practice things like that outside of maybe doing a couple scrims, which I will say there's been a lot more scrims this year than there usually have been. So that's a good sign on its own. But I think we'll see as the season goes on, and defensive pairings as well as just general team defense sort of get a little bit better, and people have a better understanding of what they each need to do individually within their respective organization, then I think you'll see that the scores will start to be a little bit closer. But so far, it's just been an offensive slug match every game, and it's like it's either a really high scoring game overall, or one team just blows the other team out of the water.
Yeah.
So, and it feels like a lot of the teams that are winning by an absurd amount of goals. Like again, you look at their 7-1 Mercy game, Chicago over Tampa. It wasn't like Chicago was necessarily playing stellar defense. Their offense was their defense. They had so much puck possession and so much control over the game clock and over the neutral zone that Tampa never had the opportunity to get anything going. And you can see that reflected in teams like Tampa's shots per game, which we'll get to momentarily when we start to look at those teams individually.
Yeah, it's the scores. Is like there seems to be at least one blowout game a week, and especially like a day, and Sunday was the worst. But there were arguably two blowout games in the Pittsburgh Chicago game where both winning teams scored 7 goals. Yeah, offensive slug mash is the definite way to describe this past couple weeks.
Yeah, it's been pretty insane. And if you look at the standings, Philly's been great. They've been the best offensive team, and they've also been the #1 team from pretty much day one. So they've only lost one game, which was to Dallas, and that was a game that there was some issues there with Briz and generally with the team not handling that situation necessarily as well as they could have.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's certainly something to be said for that, because outside of that, they've looked amazing. It was really the only sort of blip on the radar, so to speak, for their season up to this point. So the only other instance or game that I would say was a little bit shaky, maybe the Quebec game, where they only won 3-2, and I guess you could look at the Tampa game as well that they played.
Yeah.
They played Tampa and won 5-4 in regulation, I think. Yeah, regulation. And again, scored with like a minute left to win the game. And I think that was Dildo that game who got his hat trick on that goal. So shout out to Dildo. But yeah, so they've had those two close calls. The one bad game against Dallas, but their other games have been dominant to say the least. And especially the big ones you have to look at for Philly, which I'm not even really necessarily sure why it's happening, but they've absolutely blown up Chicago every time they played them. They played Chicago twice, and it was a blowout both
Yeah.
times. So
Jeez.
I don't remember how they did against Pittsburgh, though. I'd have to look at that later. But pretty much they've been running the table so far. Dallas started off week one. We were effectively 1-2 with that overtime loss. Since then, we rifled off 3 wins, which was great. It was a great week for us. That brought us up to second. Chicago had an okay week, still holding on to that third spot, 2 points above Pittsburgh. So they seem to be in a relatively safe spot now. Pittsburgh there is the 4th team. I think they might be the biggest surprise so far this season. It would be either Pittsburgh or Tampa for me, but I feel like a lot of people didn't expect Pittsburgh to be this good this early, and they had a chance to be 4-2, and the 2nd seed overall had that Dallas Pittsburgh game shaped up a little bit differently there in the 3rd. So we could be talking about the 2nd place Pittsburgh Penguins right now after 2 weeks in. So certainly something to be said there. And then you get to Tampa and Quebec, who are both 1-5. Tampa's got the 1-game tiebreaker over Quebec. Tampa's 1 win has come against Quebec, so that's why they hold 5th and Quebec holds 6th there. So if the playoffs were to begin right now, we'd have Philly versus Pittsburgh in the 1st round and Dallas versus Chicago. And then winners would move on. So that would be certainly interesting to see. I feel like a lot of people are going to start making judgments this early, because this always happens. I mean, this is a 25-game season this time around, so we've got 19 games left to play in the regular season. So there's a ton of time for these things to change, for teams to get hot, for teams to go cold. But I feel like a lot of people pretty shortly are going to start looking at these standings and just say, well, these are the playoff teams, and I really hope we don't get any situation where a team that is down and out, like if Quebec or Tampa Bay continue to run into struggles, or should another team fall down that far, I really hope we don't see teams giving up too early in the season, just because of, again, how long this season is. There's plenty of time to come back from a bad start. You look at last season with 20 games, and Atlanta almost came back from a 0-0-0-7 start. They almost came back from that. They were effectively 2 games out of a playoff spot, and the only reason they were 2 games out is because they didn't show up to the last 2 games when they got eliminated after game 18. So they lost their last 2 games in a 4v5 and a forfeit or something like that. So, but they could have been only 1 point out of a playoff spot, and that would have been entirely reasonable after starting 0-7 and only having 13 more games to turn it around. And here we've got 2 teams that are facing similar situations, but again, 19 games. There's plenty of time to right the ship. So looking forward to seeing how some of these teams react to the situation they're in. I think it's going to speak a lot to the GMs in particular and how talented they are at their job, because a lot of this is going to come down on their shoulders, you know.
It's gonna be interesting to see what GMs of Pittsburgh and not Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay, and Quebec do to rectify their situations. I think Pittsburgh's gonna try and see if they can right the ship and get some wins going, but I think Tampa Bay and Quebec are gonna see if they can do some trades here. I think maybe some trades, yeah.
I still think Pittsburgh is fine at the moment. I think their record is okay, and like there's nothing necessarily to be ashamed about there. Like I said, one bounce goes a different way, and they score that fourth goal in the third period, and we don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're 4-2 and in second place right now. So it's kind of hard to say that they're necessarily in a bad spot at the moment or that they need to make changes. But I have been hearing plenty of rumors that we could see Timo Filani on his way out. Jack Diver, if you're listening, you can go ahead and tweet that. Cite me as your source. But yeah, I'm hearing that there's a distinct possibility that we see Gabe try to move Timo here in the next week or so.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see some sort of trade. I think Gabe wants to try and keep his main core intact. I don't know about a Timo trade. Timo hasn't really put up that many points. I can check the stats right now to give you an actual accurate mark. But I think a Timo trade might be in the works. As BG said, Timo has been unhappy, so Jack Diver got some sources there. Tampa Bay, Quebec. I think Quebec is the most likely team to do a trade. Jav being a more unexperienced GM, he might be a bit more eager to do a trade. So, I think Claudius might try and work with his roster.
We've seen the most active GMs so far, like by far, have been Chicago, Tampa, and Quebec. Those teams have combined for just about every trade so far this season. So I would not be surprised to see them engage a little bit further, as those three GMs have proven to be, very active on the trading block and very interested in moving pieces around and trying to find the right thing. And you brought up Quebec, which I think is certainly a good targeting point, but I feel like Jabba has a roster that he believes in. I think you'd actually be more likely to see a move from Tampa Bay than you would from Quebec.
You think so?
Yeah,
you think
I do.
Tampa Bay is more eager to pull the trigger than Quebec?
I think so. I think so.
I can
because
I
think given what I know of the GMs, given what I know of the teams and how they feel at the moment, there's a little bit more concern, I think, in the Tampa Bay locker room, so to speak, the metaphorical Tampa Bay locker room. There's a little bit more concern there, sort of a quiet concern that things, really aren't going the way that they anticipated or that they hoped they would, or that they believed they would. Whereas I think Quebec has a little bit more faith in themselves still to turn this around, and I think McJab is a reflection of that. Like, I think he believes that this group can be something more, whereas I think you're starting to see a little bit of doubt in the minds of those on Tampa Bay. And I think especially if they lose another 2 or 3 games, like if this next week for them is not good, I definitely think you're going to see some pieces moving, or at least there'll be plenty of talks about it. So yeah. We'll get into the team by team stuff here, because we're pretty much getting into it already. So I'll pull up. We'll go with Tampa Bay here. Pull up the Tampa Bay roster. There we go. So I got it up on screen right now. It's a little bit, where is it cut off there? There we go, I got it. Okay, so there's Tampa. So yeah, as we were talking about, I think they're a little bit more likely to make a move right now. You look at how things have gone for them, and you've got K-Bomb, who's now at a sub 50% save rate, which might be the first time in his career he's done that since like season 3 when he first started playing goalie. So there's clearly something wrong there, and you look at, like, they got 3 shots last game. Granted, it was a shortened game. It was an 11-minute game in total, but they had 3 shots last game. And I sort of alluded to it. Yeah, I sort of alluded to it there when we were talking about the schedule, and that I think your offense can be your defense, or your best defense can be your offense. And you look at that game, I think, as a great example, because Leafs wasn't there for that game. So he wasn't there to play defense to be holding it down. And that's not to say that the other players on that team are incapable of it. They had Slim and Johnny Hockey starting on defense there. But their ability to hold the puck in the zone, to hold it in the neutral zone, to dominate on the boards, dominate the blue line, dominate both blue lines, really, just shut down any opportunities that Tampa Bay would ever have. And they just kept the puck going in the offensive zone the entire time. And that's become a consistent problem for Tampa because they can't clear the puck out of their zone. You see they're giving up almost 10 shots a game, which is one of the worst in the league. I don't have the exact number for you, but it's definitely one of the worst. And at 6.3 shots per game, that's the second worst shots per game we've seen from a 5v5 team in the last 3 seasons. So they really need to find a way to get the puck out of their own zone, because what's happening here, and you can sort of watch it on the replays, is the other team gets the puck in Tampa's defensive zone and are cycling it around, getting shots on net, peppering K-Bomb over and over again, and Tampa's unable to get the puck back and get a breakout going. What they usually are somewhat successful at is getting the puck and dumping it down in the zone, which is fine if you have a strategy that works well for dump and chase, but I don't know that they necessarily have one cemented there for that. So it's unfortunate, but it seems like they're running into a situation where they're being forced to play a certain play style that they aren't necessarily aware they're being forced into. And that's something that Claude is going to have to start to recognize, and some of the onus is going to be on the players as well to maybe speak up and help him recognize that, given that this is his first time being a GM and running a team like this. So, but that's become a huge problem for them. They really can't break it out at all, which means you've got your forwards who can never really, I mean, they're not getting open, the passes aren't getting to them, they're not receiving it when the passes are there. And, you know, I'm sorry to hand out criticism. I don't mean to say that like anyone on that team is bad or anything like that, because you look at the team and it's a very talented roster. But the reality of the situation is they're pretty much all underperforming at this point in time, and that's because the strategy or lack thereof that they're currently using is fundamentally flawed. And I really think that they need to sit down and hash that out if they want to see a turnaround from this team at all in the coming days.
And like they haven't really been putting up points either. Like it's not like JLalu or you are on that team where like you have like 17 or 14 points at this point. Like the highest they got is 9, and right now that's not even enough to crack the top leaderboards. Like they need to get points on the board. They need to start doing some offense.
They have the worst shot differential in the league by far at -21. By far the worst shot differential. Which, you know, when you look at the shots per game and shots against per game, it's fairly easy to figure that out. So it's certainly an unfortunate scenario there going on that team right now, but it's going to require work. That's not one of those things that's just going to fix itself. You know, this is one of those situations where you have to go back, you have to look through it, you have to actually identify what's going on, and part of that comes from watching a replay and understanding what to look for. A lot of people, or I shouldn't even say a lot of people, the people that do watch replays a lot of the time don't necessarily know what they're watching for. They're just sort of watching the replay, and they believe that that's all it takes to sort of self-reflect on a game and get better. But in reality, especially from the perspective of the GM, if you're going to watch the replay at all, you're really not going to get anything out of it unless you're looking through meticulously at every single person during every single play and understanding what they're doing, what they should be doing, why they're doing what they are doing, and why they aren't doing what they should be doing. Those things become incredibly important, and it's really easy to overlook them, especially if you don't want to put in the time into that, which, you know, a lot of people, in fairness, a lot of people in this community don't want to put in the time for that, but that is what it takes to get yourself out of a hole like this, and we have yet to really see so far this season that Claude has the drive to do that.
Yeah, it's not very good.
So we're gonna have to see something very different than what we've seen so far. And shout out to Gabe if you're listening for just spamming me on TeamSpeak there. Thanks, Gabe. He wanted me to send him a message when we started talking about Pittsburgh. So maybe we'll talk about Pittsburgh next maybe, and I just won't mention anything to him. And then I'll say afterwards, "Ooh, shoot, I forgot to message you. My bad, Gabe." Who knows? Maybe we'll just not talk about Pittsburgh and just leave him with blue balls the whole time. I'm gonna just like close TeamSpeak in a second. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so yeah, we have to see drastic changes in play style and motivation and drive there from Tampa before we're going to see any changes on the ice. So they're right now in a really, really rough spot, and like we said, it's not going to fix itself. You really got to put in the effort. You got to put in the work, and a lot of that comes from understanding what you're doing wrong, and I don't think they understand that right now. But I think if you go back and actually look at it, and like we said, go through and look at those specific things and start to get a better idea of the bigger picture, I don't think it's that difficult to figure out what the issues they're faced with are right now. So yeah, hopefully they get the ship turned around there, because a couple more losses and they're effectively out.
Yeah, it's like you can't, like, you need to show up and work. Like, you can't. It's not enough to just show up for like 5 minutes ahead of your game, play 15 minutes, and then like just go out there and then just do. Like, you have to work. You have to show up every day. You have to bring a lunchbox. You actually have to work at this. Like it sounds dumb saying you have to work in a video game, but you actually have to put out effort. You have to put effort in this game.
If you want to be good, yep. If you want to be like a cup winning team, you really do. You have to put forth that extra effort. Maybe not necessarily to the extent of what someone like Dalfan would do.
But still, like, you need to watch. Like, you need to crack mistakes. You need to get the you need, especially for your GM, you have to be a leader on that team. You have to be the quote-unquote captain. You have to be the guy who's going to say, this isn't working, we need to change this up. Everyone needs to step up, and we need to work harder.
Somebody's got to be a leader, and I think right now, when you look at those guys on that team, there's a lot of guys that, it's not that they aren't leaders, they just tend to be the guys that are a bit more quiet, a bit more reserved, and not the type who are going to stand up and say, and criticize their teammates and things like that. So I think there needs to be some more serious self-reflection that's going on there, and again, that extends beyond Claude, but it does start with Claude. It starts with Claude and it works its way down, and at some point, whether it comes from Claude or it comes from somebody else, somebody's going to have to step up and say, we seriously need a change. And as I mentioned before, I do think you're starting to see reactions like that coming out of the Tampa Bay players. And I know they did a bit of a lineup change where I think Crab is now starting on offense. And I think Cap's getting, as I understood the situation, Cap's getting 5 minutes on offense, Crab is getting 10, and Germs is getting, Germs is playing defense while Cap is a forward, and okay, alright, I got it now. I had to mental math that out. So Cap's getting 5 minutes, Germs is getting the other 10 minutes. While Cap is in there, he's a forward. While Germs is in there, he's on defense. And Crab will just play whatever role those other two aren't playing. That makes sense. So he'll have 10 minutes on offense, 5 minutes on defense. So confusing a bit there, but that's the system they rolled with, or they were rolling with, or trying to roll with anyway, on their last game. And things got a little bit out of hand, so I think they sort of lost sight of that, but we'll see what happens. The other team that's down there struggling right now is McJabba's team, Quebec.
Yeah, Quebec's not doing too good either.
Yeah, so we've seen one game from them so far with Matt, which is eerily similar to the Winnipeg situation of the season. This just looks like Winnipeg V2, and you see some of the players, and it feels like Winnipeg V2, especially now that Nina's there. Nina's been on that team before, Byrne's been on that team before, Byrne and Otto were the two that were on the Winnipeg team last season with Matt that started off incredibly slowly and really never was able to come back from it. And I'm worried that we're going to see another situation like that here with this team. where it's the same thing. It's you've got Matt as your main guy, and he's just never there. And when he was there, 5 points in that one game, and they won, but that's their only win so far this season. And the rest of the season's just been disappointing at best to say. And if you take out that one win, they have a negative 13 goal differential through those 5 games. So they're getting outscored by almost 3 goals a game every single time, which is not really something you want to see. Their shots per game also quite low. Their shot percentage, just like Tampa, is a bit low. Usually average shot percentage is probably like low to mid 40s. That's like fairly typical shot percentage. They usually even out to like 40, 41, 42% roughly, maybe 39% on the lower end a little bit. Average shots per game, probably a little bit closer to like between 8.5 and 9, like 8.75, maybe 9 shots a game. Around there, it would be pretty average or pretty typical. So they're full shot per game behind average, and shots against per game is roughly about the same place as it should be. And they're about, they're a little bit over in shots per game, but not necessarily terrible when you look at the rest of the league. So their defensive core isn't, I'm not going to say is that bad. I think this is a situation where their lack of ability to generate offense is hurting them defensively, where they're not able to hold the puck in the zone long enough, sort of like an inverse of what we talked about with that Chicago versus Tampa matchup, where Chicago dominated in the offensive zone and didn't let Tampa out. This is sort of the other end of that spectrum, where Quebec's not getting enough opportunities necessarily, and when they do get an opportunity, it's not being converted as much as it needs to be. When you look at that 37% shot percentage, and you see that they're not really scoring enough on their shots. And again, that should even out a little bit more, but you've got to give yourself as many chances to score in any game as possible. And it sounds silly, but sometimes that requires you to play more of a possession game. And that's something that a lot of players in this league, on any team, this isn't a problem that's necessarily just specific to Quebec, but that's generally just an issue that goes around and has always gone around in the OHL or the RSL, that you'll get more scoring chances by having possession of the puck, by controlling the neutral zone, and by succeeding on your breakout opportunities. And those are 3 things that are really easy to say, but how do you implement those? How do you show those on the ice? Like how do you demonstrate that? And that's a much harder question to answer, or harder series of questions to answer, and one that I don't think Quebec has really found an answer to when they don't have Matt, who's able to create these opportunities on his own. But you look outside that, and we'll get to the trade in a second, but they have a talented roster, just like Tampa. It's not like this team is void of talent. You go back and you look at Winnipeg, it's not like that team is void of talent either. The talent is there. It's just the ability to execute and function together, which they haven't really gotten down. The one nice thing about Quebec is that their recent games haven't been anywhere near as one-sided or dominant, I guess, as Tampa's games have been. Like this past week, while being 3 losses for them, wasn't 3 losses that were anywhere near as bad as Tampa. And like you look at their shot differential, and they're only getting outshot by 8 right now. They have a negative 8 shot differential, which for a team that's 1-5 really isn't that bad. And a negative 9 goal differential for a team that's 1-5 really isn't that terrible either. When you go back and look at Tampa, who's minus 16 goal differential and minus 21 shot differential. So they're in a bit of a better position, and this sort of is the reason why I think the Quebec team feels a little bit more confident in themselves probably than Tampa does at this point. And if they can get any increase in attendance from that, they're going to see far more success on the ice. And I think that kind of goes without saying, but they're gonna, if they want to make the playoffs at this rate, with the rate that Matt's showing up, like 1 in 6 games so far, with this rate that he's showing up, they're going to need success from people beyond him, and they haven't seen enough of that yet. Otto's not doing terrible, But you have to see someone like McJaba, who was over 2 points per game last season, and he's under a point per game this season. Somebody like Not Led, who I think has only played one game with the team, if he even played with them on Thursday. I can't even remember if that trade happened after the Thursday games or not. I think it was before.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Not Led, you need to see more than 2/3 of a point per game from him. Evcobb, you'd expect to see a little bit more than half a point per game from him. Like there's these players there that have a lot of offensive talent, and those are the players that they need to lean on here to sort of get things going when you don't have somebody like Matt on the ice there. So we'll reserve judgment a little bit there on them because they
Burns saying Naled scored a goal on Thursday.
Yes.
He played and scored.
Yep. He scored one, and I think Jabba got the other. You can correct me. I think Notley got one, Java got the other, and Otto got both assists, I'm pretty sure, is how that game shaped out. I seem to remember that being the case as I was putting in the stats there. So, but yeah, so, it's getting there, and I don't want to criticize them too much while they're still sort of getting their lineup set.
Yeah, I don't like to kick a man when he's down, but still.
Well, yes and no. It's a different team. It's a different team. Having Notled here and having Nina here is a different team than having PK and Zod was. So, and I'm not trying to say it's necessarily a better or worse team. I mean, we don't know that yet, but it's a different team, and they showed a drive against Philly that they hadn't shown all season long without Matt, which is they kept the game close and they only lost by 1 goal. It was a 3-2 game, which is really, really good, all things considered. So if we can see more of that from them, they stand a decent chance at turning it around. If they revert back to the type of team that's going to lose 5-1, 5-2, 6-2, 6-3, whatever the case is, they're losing these one-sided affairs, a couple more of them, and you're in the same boat as Tampa, where there's almost no hope of coming back. I mean, again, long season, but going 0-3 next week would be extremely detrimental. Very, very hard to come back from a 1-8 start like that. So, and it's not just the ability to come back; it's the motivation you have too. That's plays a huge factor into things like this. And I think that was sort of something we saw from Atlanta last season, where the squad that went 0-7 had lost all motivation to play the game, and it wasn't until PK stepped up, Fuzzy was kicked out, and many trades were made to bring in a different group of guys that you finally saw that motivation change. And I hope for their sake on Quebec and Tampa that it doesn't necessarily have to resort to that to get that change out of them, get that motivation out of them.
Yeah, I think trades are gonna have to happen. I don't think trades are gonna trades they have to. That's I personally I think it's the only way. Team if you want to right the ship now, because I just said going 0-3 next week is you're gonna be in the bottom of the barrel, and it's gonna be a long crawl out of it. And I think we're gonna see a lot of trades in the coming week or maybe 2 weeks, especially from the bottom 2 teams.
It's hard to know what's going on in their locker room. It's hard to know, how those players feel, how the GM feels about the situation, obviously. But again, as we spoke earlier, those are 2 GMs on Tampa and Quebec that have been heavily active in trading so far this season. So I don't think it's necessarily unfair or unsafe to expect that there's going to be more trades coming from them. And we'll get to the team that I mentioned the trade rumor about earlier, which is Pittsburgh. So, Gabe, if you're listening, we're talking about Pittsburgh.
He wants in. he wants in. He even messaged me about it. Are we gonna get him in here or no?
I mean, I suppose.
I don't know. We probably should.
I suppose.
Do you want to pull him or on me too?
You can go ahead.
His stuff's muted, so it's gonna be interesting.
Buddy was moved to your channel.
Yeah, his stuff still's muted, so. I don't know, let's BM him before he comes in here.
I guess we'll just talk about is he there?
His stuff's unmuted. Go. Welcome to
You
the,
sound so weird on your laptop, Gabe.
Welcome to the Dick Dyal pile, Gabe. Welcome aboard.
Oh, 1 sec.
Oh God.
Yeah, he
Very
sounds so.
professional
He
here.
kind of sounds like Bo, honestly.
Hello.
That's a little bit better. What's up, Gabe?
Well, I'm actually Bo.
Oh,
go
Bo,
away,
right,
Brim.
my
I'm
bad.
busy right now. Okay, so. Yeah, so. How's it going?
Not bad, not bad. Did we have you on at all last season? I think we did. I think we had you on a couple
I'm not
times
sure.
last season. I think a couple
I don't
times
think we had him on
briefly
once
here or
though.
there. I don't know, whatever. Well, welcome to the show for your potentially first or second or third time. Who knows? So how do you feel about your team situation right now?
Honestly, I'm happy with our performance. Considering the fact that I think we've only lost one game of the 4 that Timu has shown up to, which is pretty solid. And then also considering the fact that when we actually have our full lineup, we have a 100% win rate because we did not have Mr. U against you guys, Dallas, the other day. So I think the fact that we didn't have Mr. U for that game and that Proper was, he had like close to 200 ping. Given that fact, I'm actually very satisfied. I think our team could go a very long way. With or without Timu. And we can go further into those issues if you're
Are
interested.
you saying trade? Jack Dowd needs some information here.
I'll put it this way. I thought the game went very well. And during the scrim that followed after, we, as you know, but the viewers may not, we scrimmed, Pittsburgh and Dallas scrimmed directly after we had the last game of the night. So we just scrimmed right after our game. And that's when we started to kind of talk about what went wrong, not just in our last game, but in the current scrim, and we started to kind of get into an argument, specifically Timu and I.
Yeah, we Dallas heard about that. I heard about it. We could hear you guys arguing.
Heard about that.
We
Dial was in
could
the channel.
we could hear through TeamSpeak you guys yelling at each other.
Through the TeamSpeak wall, the walls are very thin.
Especially in the Pittsburgh locker room. It's a very shitty locker room. I've been in it. It's kind of bad.
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, but we had a disagreement on, it was kind of a just Timu and I pointing fingers at each other kind of a situation.
Have you been disappointed with his play at all on the ice, or is it strictly an off the ice thing that's resulted in most of this?
For the most part, it hasn't been that much of an issue. It's just obviously you could say I'm biased. However, I have talked to more than one member of the team about this. It's that I find that I don't want to call it puck chasing because it's not puck chasing. It really isn't. It's more that he's just playing other people's positions, and he's not taking note of the fact that other people might already be in a position, and he's doubling up on a certain position, and it leaves gaps.
It's a general awareness sort of issue.
That's what I feel like. He's talking, no doubt. We're both talking, so it's not a communication issue. It's just he naturally, the way he moves around the ice often results in him going on top of another player in our team.
Now,
and that, it leaves gaps on the ice.
Timu is a player who, throughout his 5v5 career, has scored well over 2 goals a game. For pretty much, like I said, the entirety of his 5v5 career. You go back to his 4v4 career, he's probably scoring almost 3 goals a game there, but scoring well over 2 goals a game so far. But here in 5v5 this season, he's got 4 goals in 4 games. He's got the 1 assist to go along with it. Are you worried at all about his lack of production? Do you think that's just sort of a result of the system that he's playing, or do you think that's a result of his lack of awareness?
I think that's a result of the way the team plays as a whole. I think when you look at the previous teams he's been on, he was really on a team. I don't really have easy access here to these stats, but I think you're on them here. If we can look at previous seasons, he's almost always been on a team where he was kind of enabled to kind of take the puck and do whatever it takes to score.
It's his laptop.
Oh, okay. I was like, what the fuck? But anyway, continue.
Yeah, I think Timu's always been hold for, what was it, San Jose?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He's almost always been on a team that kind of made him the one guy, the go-to guy to put it in the back of the net. And
Yeah,
I guess
and
I'm used to being that guy as well.
It's certainly a different situation when there's two players of your caliber on the ice together, and I mean that's something that we often see doesn't work out very well. There are some times where it does, where you can put two players like that together and it succeeds, and there are plenty of situations in the past where we've seen that attempted and fail miserably. So I'm not going to say necessarily that this has failed miserably. I don't think it's fair to qualify that as what's going on here, but there's certainly a disconnect between what you expect, what he expects, and what the team expects. So
yeah, I think my logic when I think about it, when I think about how it should work, is that, you know, I think about my time on Dallas last season when we played Chicago in the first round. And I just remember how our objective was to shut out Matt, because if Matt feels pressured and has trouble getting his things done, the rest of the team who normally relies on Matt is just not going to be as effective at getting the puck in the net. And that's what we did. We did our best to shut down Matt, and they had a lot of trouble scoring. So I think you look at our team, and you really can't shut down our offense completely. It's like next to impossible unless you have near flawless coordination, which is it just can't really happen, considering the fact that, you know, it just doesn't really happen. Yeah, don't get me wrong, there are teams that are really good defensively that play well together. I think
well, you've got two major scoring threats. You've got two major scoring threats on your team, which is something that most teams usually can't lay claim to. And when you look at defense, most teams don't have two elite defenders either. I don't think you'd necessarily consider any team so far this season to be in that position. So
I think when you look at my team, you got, you know, Timu and I, and I'm fine being the guy, you know, I'm fine letting Timu off the leash. That was originally my plan, was to say, okay, I'm not going to make Timu try to play by some set of strict rules, because not only do I know he won't do that, but I also know he doesn't like to do that, and I know he wouldn't do it because I heard it from like every one of his previous GMs said that, and I didn't necessarily think they were lying or wrong, but I also said, okay, well, maybe just work around Timu.
And you have to consider too where you were picking in the draft as well. I mean, he was likely the best pick at your position, so it wasn't necessarily like you had a ton of options to go a different way. So I don't think it's necessarily wrong of you to look at that and say, like, perhaps I can get something different from this. Like, I know you guys have been close in the past, so I don't think it's unreasonable to look at that and think that I might be able to get something out of him that other GMs haven't been able to do so far.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is, the last time I told him I was going to draft him, I tried to I tried to be tricky and get Claude in the first round, and I thought Timu would drop to the second, and he ended up getting picked up by Leafs one pick before me in the second round. And Timu was really bummed. I mean, he, you know, don't get me wrong, he had a good season regardless with Big V on Toronto. But he was a little bit bummed out. We were both bummed out because the plan was for us to play together. Because we were looking forward to playing each other back in season 4. That's like over a year ago now. And I got traded almost after one game to to Anaheim. And Timu was bummed out even then because we didn't get to play together. So when it finally came down to it, I'm like, I'm not making the same mistake again. We want to give it a shot, play together. And so I went for it. And I think it could work. And I think it has been working. I mean, like I said before, we have 100% win rate when all 5 of us, Proper, me, Trevor Crow, Timu, and Mr. U, were playing on the ice. We have 3 games where we had those. Only 50% of our games had all 5 of us on the ice. And we won all those games. That being said, they were also against, rosters that weren't very threatening. So, and we came very close to beating you guys. So...
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think before you came on, one
bad
bounced
bounce,
the other
right?
way,
Yeah.
and you guys win that game 4-3. You guys are 4-2 record overall. You're second place in the league, and we might be talking an entirely different story right now. So
Yeah, I mean, I looked at that game and I thought about it multiple times, and I considered everything. I considered the fact that Meatsale probably had the best game of his career. The fact that Proper had like over 200 ping, and he let in some really crappy, like, you know, I'm not dissing him. I'm just saying that they were goals that he was really upset about. Goals where he should have just swatted it out, and the puck kind of rolled up his stick, and he could have just hit it away, and he kind of, you know, just due to the delay in his mouse movement, he caused it to let it in, which is unfortunate. I think there were goals that we should not have let in, and I think that if we had our skaters that we were more comfortable with, if we had Mr. U playing back with Trev like we had previously, I think our defense would have also been more solid. And I think when you combine all that together, and I'm not even trying to say this as in, you know, fuck you Dallas, we could have beaten you. I'm not even saying that. It's more of a, based on all of those factors, I'm pretty comfortable with the way we played.
are you considering getting Marchie more involved in the game? He's actually the highest plus minus on your team and second highest points per game.
Yeah, that's something he brought up, like how like every time I've been on the ice, he was telling me that, like, oh, every time I've been on the ice we won. The thing is, when we did play him, it was also, you know, against teams that were not threatening in any way, in my opinion. So I think you have to consider the teams we were facing as well. And I mean, the last thing I want to do is you know, like, make fun of Marchie on the stream. Though I do have my reasons for why I wouldn't consider starting him over my other 4 players. I don't think it has anything to do with his skill just as a skater. Like, take out all the other factors of the game and just give Marchie the you know, a stick and a puck and tell him to skate around and do stuff. He'd look great. And I think when there's other factors going on, you know, whether it be positioning or momentum, especially momentum based things that need to be worked on, would definitely be one of the things I'm worried about. But okay. I definitely think he'll be, if he stays with us throughout the rest of I'm not saying I have any intention of trading him. However, I wouldn't, if part of a trade, if he was part of a bigger trade, if that was what it took, the other GM wanted him, I wouldn't, you know, I would consider it. He's not off the table.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, that's all the questions I got for you. Dick, do you have anything else for him?
Nah, man, I've been sitting here listening to him BM us and talk about his team, so I'm out of questions really.
Other than, you know, screw you, Dallas. Totally could have been you.
Yeah, other than lucky. If you, okay, let's say hypothetically the team continues, you only win 1 game next week. Can you give us any insider tips about a trade?
Right now, I could tell you this. If I am going to do a trade, I think I would look to get rid of Timu, not because I think he's a bad player or that it's not going to work out. I think we're playing, you know, and I'm going to say this again, like when we had all 5 of our players, you look at like other teams that look to have good lineups, they have really good attendance with all their players, and they've had all of their main starters on the ice for multiple games. And you look at our team, we've only had only 3 of the games had our main 5 players all on the ice at once, and we won every single one. So I think that if there is going to be a trade, like, I think Timu is good, but I think, yeah, if there's going to be a trade, I'm probably going to be looking to get rid of Timu and maybe opt for someone who's maybe less dangerous on their own, but could potentially work with me better. Not, and I don't mean that in the kind of way where I think Timu is the absolute issue. I think it's a 2-way street. But obviously I'm the GM, so I can't move myself.
Very true. All right, well, thank you for coming on, Gabe. Thank you for the insight. That's more insight than we pretty much have ever gotten, I think, from any GM that we've ever interviewed. So, pretty cool to see a much more in-depth opinion from somebody who's, you know, actually relevant to the situation. So, rather than us just, you know, sort of talking off our ass about it, you know, like we talk about things that we think we know, talk about things that we hear, that we overhear.
Yeah.
That we can sort of gather, but obviously a lot of it is speculation. So,
oh yeah, you just reminded me when you said that. You were talking about the Philadelphia game, how that game went, and I just wanted to fill that in really quick.
Yeah.
Timu, we had our full team, normal lineup, and Timu was there. basically up until I think the end. I think he
Left at the end of the second.
Was it at the end of the second?
Yep.
Okay, so it was a tie game at the end of the second. And then after Timu left, it dropped down. I think
Yeah,
once
was it
I
2-2
moved
or
Mr.
3-3 at the end of the
I
second?
don't remember exactly what happened, but I think I may have had like Marchie on defense. I'm not 100% sure what happened that game. I don't remember who was there and who wasn't. So I withdraw that. I don't know if Marchie was there. I don't want to name names if I don't know for sure.
I thought it
But I
was
do know that
Marchie who
when
came
Timu
in
left,
for him.
it was like 3-3.
Yeah, I thought it
And
was
then they
Marchie.
scored, and then Philadelphia scored 3 times on us.
Yeah.
And I think without Timu kind of playing more offense, without another really dangerous player to play offense within the zone, I think that probably just the main cause for that may have just been that I was maybe playing a little bit too much offense, maybe, and maybe that resulted in less less two-way play for me. Who knows? I would have to review that game. I don't really remember it now. But yeah, I mean, that was a close game up until Timu left. And that obviously counts as a game played for him, even though he wasn't there for the whole thing. So I think when you take all of that into account, I think Timu is going to have better attendance in the future. All things considered, I think we're definitely a team that could be first or second place right now if we had everyone there. And so far, we have had just some holes. Like one day, Trev wasn't there. Yesterday, Mr. Yu wasn't there, and obviously Timu missed some in the beginning of the season. So hopefully, if we can start to, I'm reluctant to give Timu away now or even like next week. I want to see how everything works out, but we'll see.
Makes sense. All right, awesome, Gabe. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for coming on, Gabe. Thanks for being here.
All right, so we'll move on to probably Chicago because that's just the easiest to scroll up to. So we'll look at Chicago. So before we really get into it, because I kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit more with Quebec, we didn't really do it quite as much. What do you think of the trade that happened? It was Not Led and Nina going to Quebec in return for PK and Zod.
Cool. I'm actually have to pull up the roster here. My fucking fan would stop yelling downstairs and my fucking
so the starting lineup for Chicago now just basically becomes PK instead of Nina.
That's an upgrade in goaltending for me. I love Nina. Like Nina is a good guy, but PK for Nina, that's like 1 for 1, good trade. Those two PKs, PK is a definite upgrade.
From Chicago's perspective, essentially what they did, right, was they traded away Nina to get PK, and the sort of loss, as you want to look at it that way, is that their sixth man, Not Led, they traded for Zod. So they took a decrease in backup players for an increase in starting player.
Which I can that's to me Not Led really only played 2 games now. He's got 2 or 3 points. In my opinion, that's okay. I think I'm gonna agree with that. That's an okay.
I actually think it's a win for Chicago. I think Chicago got the better end of that deal. I do think it's going to work out well for Quebec because I think they needed another forward there that they trusted, and I think Not Led does present that. But you look at the situation there for Quebec, and they took a hit in starting goaltending to get an increase in starting offense, whereas Chicago took a hit in backup skater or backup offense for an increase in starting goalie. So in terms of what they had to give up for what they gave back, in terms of what they gave up for what they were able to get back, that's what I was attempting to say. I think Chicago did a little bit better on their return there, even though it may look like on paper that they gave more away. So I think they were in a better position. They had drafted Not Led sort of late there just because of his potential attendance issues in the draft, so they were able to use him as sort of a chip there to trade. And actually, I think it was Quebec that initially drafted Not Led. Now that I think about it, Quebec drafted him, he got traded to Chicago, and then got traded back to Quebec. So this is his second time on Quebec. And this is Zod's second time at Chicago as well. So this might actually, this is I think the first time ever with these two players that a player has been traded away from a team and then traded back to that team in the same season.
Yeah.
Pretty sure this is the first time that's ever happened. And we saw it with 2 different people in the same trade, which is pretty cool.
Jeez.
So, a bit of a weird scenario, right? You get traded away and then you get traded back. It's like, how often does that actually happen? So, anyway, yeah. So I think both teams got better, but I think Chicago won the trade over Quebec.
Yeah, Chicago's definitely won the trade.
So that's the way I look at it. But so yeah, we'll see what happens with PK though, because PK does have usually high latency, high ping issues, and that tends to cause a decent amount of problems for him. And you look at like statistically for him, and it hasn't been necessarily an overwhelming season. He's given up 3.8 goals per game. The team's given up 4 goals per game right now. PK was facing 7.8 shots per game. Here he'll be facing 8.8 shots per game. So I think you're going to see a bit more asked of him than on Quebec, just given the way these 2 teams have shaped out. But I think he's a good enough player that he'll be able to step up in that role and be fine. I just worry about his ping becoming like a significant issue, in which case you're going to see more from GT. You see GT's got that 1 minute time on ice. He came in for the 3rd period of their 7-1 Mercy game over Tampa this past week. Or Thursday, I should say, yesterday, right? So you might wind up seeing more of him with PK having some severe issues that he might not be able to work through. The one other concern I have with this team is that I think their scoring is too front-loaded into 2 players. You look at Tall Midget and Krejci, and they have 14 and 15 points respectively, and the rest of the team, Leafs is the 2nd highest with 6, and then everyone else has 1 or fewer points.
Yeah.
And let's see if I can pull up Atlanta from last season, because Atlanta, yeah, so sorry, it's not going to cut off entirely well here for comparison, but you look at this team from last season and it's surprisingly similar. You get Lucic, Tall, and PK all over again. Look at how the points are spread.
Yeah.
38 points for Lucic, 41 for Tall, and the next highest was 8 with Gouch. You come back to Chicago, and it's almost the exact same story. And the reason why I bring this up is I'm worried that their ultimate downfall will be the fact that they're not getting enough production from other players. I think they need to see a little bit more point scoring from Leafs and a lot more involvement from Johnny offensively for this team to really succeed and have a really strong chance at winning a cup this season. It's certainly possible that they can win by this method. And you know, we spoke about it many times in this podcast. I've been a huge proponent of this, probably biggest, that Atlanta was actually a very good team after their trades last season. And it's a team that's almost identical to this, where you're not seeing that offensive output from anyone other than Lucic and Tall. So they proved that it was successful. They had one of the best records in the league while they had that offensive pairing, 2nd best record in the league while they had that pairing last season. So, and they're 3rd seed right now with this same pairing. So you certainly expect to see big things from them, but we didn't see this team in the playoffs last season. And it's when you hear like what Gabe said earlier, there are teams that are in the playoffs that are going to target them specifically and try and shut down those 2 players. And while that's really hard to do, if you can shut down even one of them, like Lucic as an example, shut him down and put the game in the hands of Tall and Leafs, we haven't seen that they're capable of carrying the game offensively between the 2 of them yet. And I'm not saying that they're incapable of it, because we all know that they're fantastic players and they certainly deserve to be where they are right now. They've been some of the better players in the league the past 4 or 5 seasons. Only limited there is Tall, who didn't really get to start before season 6. So, but outside of that, I mean, they're some incredibly talented players. But we haven't really seen it yet on this team, them being able to piece together victories if somebody like Lucic or Tall is shut down. And that's the one thing that concerns me a bit for them when you sort of look at the playoffs, which is obviously down the line here, but nonetheless
Way down the
something
line,
to
but
think about.
still, yeah, it's something to extremely think about. Like I think it should be something that's like on everyone's mind right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to build a team that's going to succeed in the postseason, right? Like, it doesn't matter how well you do in the regular season. We've seen fourth seed teams that make it to Game 7 in the finals. So
yeah, we've seen
we've
seen fourth seeds knock out the first seed.
Exactly. So it doesn't really matter how you do in the regular season. What matters is what you do during the actual show. So yeah, that's really my only concern with them. But overall, as a team, they're doing pretty good. Their shots against per game is pretty good, all things considered, just about average, maybe a little bit below average so far this season, just because this season's been very offensive heavy. Their shots per game is pretty good. Their shot percentage is nice, right about where it should be, maybe a little bit high. The only real issue for them so far is that they've been giving up a decent amount of goals per game, which they're going to have to sort of work on a little bit. You look at their team save percentage, it's down to about 55%. So again, sort of in line with the fact that it's been a very offensive league so far, but nonetheless, they're going to have to see improvements from that, and I think PK should be able to do that. So we'll skip over to Dallas here now.
Let me get as we send over to Dallas, I'm gonna invite our dear friend Dalfan in.
Oh boy. If you've been sending me things in TeamSpeak, by the way, if any of those have been you, I haven't been looking. I stopped looking. I stopped looking at TeamSpeak and Steam a while ago just because I was getting spam notifications from people. So I just stopped. I'm just not gonna look at it till the stream's over. So if you need anything or want anything, like want to contact me, message Dick Doug and have him tell me.
Dick Doug.
Yo, you guys want to scrim?
Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm here.
Sorry,
you guys for the
players.
scrimmage.
Sorry, I only have 4 players.
I have 2 already. No, I just need you guys both.
Oh, just us?
Yeah, we have.
Why did we invite him in?
There's a team with 5 people there waiting.
Buddy was moved out of your channel.
Jesus Christ.
Buddy joined your channel.
Are you serious?
Oh my god.
Oh
the Dick Dyal
this is where it devolves into this isn't even a Dallas circle jerk. This is just us circle jerking.
Waiting in a server.
Oh my god.
Does he have 5 players or still 4?
I need you guys on the ice stat. Or you're benched on Sunday.
I'm not showing up Sunday, so who cares?
Oh man. Well, that's the first I've heard of that. Thanks for telling me.
Tuesday and Thursday then, I guess.
Damn, rest in peace.
Anyway,
Right,
hello Dalf. Welcome back to the stream, Dalf. It's been a while.
Should we talk about how we beat Philadelphia in the finals, or do you want to talk about
you know what? I want to talk about your plus minus, Dick.
Oh my! Is it the best in the league again? Is it the best in the league?
No,
it's actually the worst among all Dallas starters.
Yeah, but but still, I haven't shown up a lot of games. I know, still, it's better than do sets, better than meat sale.
Wow, that's cherry picking right there. You're cherry picking a bit much there.
Give it to I'm a playoff performer, alright? I don't like the regular season I play, and in the playoffs I turn up. That's when I go.
Okay.
See,
anyway,
you'll see my plus minus go for the
Dallas.
playoffs,
much better week than week 1. Week 1 we were 1-2. Week 2 we were 3-0. So obviously, much sort of speaks for itself. Much better week. Which is something I think we needed to get going, and obviously we're 2nd seed right now. I don't think we necessarily thought we'd be here after this week, but happy to be here. Dalfan, I'll sort of hand things off to you here. Are you happy with the direction that the team is going in right now?
We got a fairly lucky week. I don't think the team is playing anywhere near its potential, and we're still giving up over 9 shots per game against. Granted, I think we're first in terms of shots for, but that is startling given how many shots we're giving up. Thursday we probably shouldn't have won that game. When you really look at it you eliminate the goaltenders and say how honestly did we play. I'm not saying take out the goaltenders per se, but when you really consider the quality of the scoring chances. What Gabe came in here and said about, hey, if Proper didn't have 200 ping, they probably would have won that game. That's probably. I
Yep, I
wouldn't
agree.
necessarily say they would have won the game. It would have gone to OT though. Also give
Yep.
them that much at the very least. So that's kind of my concern, is that we're still fairly getting lucky. The Philadelphia game, to start our week off, was a game that Philly was completely unprepared for, and for nearly the entire first period, Briz was AFK, and that was the
He would have
worst
beat
game
us
that.
if he was at his computer, you know.
I mean, perhaps, but what I'm getting at is that we're getting a lot of breaks, and that was the worst game I've seen a team managed by Zam play since season 7. So, I mean, I think
Uncharacteristic, for sure.
yeah. And who did we play on Tuesday? Tampa.
Tampa,
and
yep.
even that game, we didn't play necessarily that fantastically. I don't think we really shut them down like the
No,
way
we
that
got
Chicago
some
did.
good bounces in that game, for sure.
When you look at how Chicago played, that's how you should play a team that is struggling. You should give them no chance to see any light. And I think they did get 2 goals on us, if I remember, and it wasn't necessarily a blowout per se. And
Yeah, we scored the final 4 or final 3 in the third period. It was either 2-2 or 3-2 going into the third.
yeah, from what I've seen so far, we're still getting very lucky. I think Dick, Doug, and Dial are playing pretty crappy so far, and
Thanks for coming on the stream, Dalfan. You know, it's been a good time having you on, but we gotta move on to the foreskin forecast. Continue.
I will say we look back. The game against Chicago, I want to say it was 4 games ago, and we lost in OT.
It was
Am I
Thursday
right about that?
not this past week, but the week before.
Yeah,
And, yeah, we lost.
So we
in
played
OT.
3 wins, and then the last one. So last 4 were 3-0, 1, and 0. But that game, for Dick Dug, he didn't play the best. That was probably the worst game he's played all season long,
Damn.
including the preseason. And this is how I would talk if you weren't here. And I don't. And from then, that was a really bad game. And we talked about it and we reflected, and then he really rebounded. You rebounded. I don't know. It feels kind of weird to say, but coming back this week, scoring a goal in every game, and
I've scored a
playing
goal in every single game I've played. That's the one point I've done that.
playing. Well, yeah, but when you turn it over for one, it kind of nullifies that, don't you think?
I've got a goal in every game, but still.
So coming
anyway,
back.
continue DMing me, please.
When this week for sure, when we're struggling with trying to integrate a new defenseman into our team ranks, whether it's me, I'm not necessarily a new defenseman, but whether it's me or Doucette or whoever or Pizza, whoever's back there, we need Dick Dug to be on the top of his game, which is exactly what he was for the past week, and I think that was a big reason why we were so successful, coming up with 2 game-winning goals, I think, this week. So that would probably be the
games, you know.
player of the week.
Woo.
For me, and then
Player of the week in your heart, Dalfan?
I'm just talking about performance here.
But
It's
not
no
best
emotions.
defenseman.
Damn.
And
That award goes to Daloriax.
No, that's McJava. Best defenseman, McJava, dude. Never forget.
This is where I drink at night.
But just to clarify, we're not making fun of McJava at all. This is not a shot at McJava. This is a shot at Dick Dug.
Yeah, it is.
Dick Dug always wants to be the highest scoring defenseman, and McJava beat him out last season, so we take shots at him for that.
I mean, you know, he did a thing. Whether that thing was lucky or the thing was, you know, it was good.
Jesus.
Whether he can keep that thing up, who knows about that thing? I'm just gonna say that thing isn't really sustainable. That thing,
You are salty. You are
I know,
salty.
I'm salty as shit right now, bro.
Just so you know, Dick Dug, you are in the top 10.
I know. By
Barely,
hanging on by
barely.
my
So you
knees
can,
and by my feet, though.
So you can hold that.
I'm gonna lose
for
that
what it's
spot.
worth for now.
I'm gonna lose that spot this Sunday because I'm missing it for a hockey game. So,
Fine with that.
Yeah, thanks. You gotta fucking keep your spot though, eh? Actually, you have a lot of room between
Actually,
you and Krejci.
No, I do.
Dal's
I
gonna
do need
his
to
spot.
keep
Dal's
mine.
gonna keep his spot. Dal, but you play defense now permanently, or are you on offense?
it all depends on how everyone plays. It's a complicated, rotating square.
Square. I prefer to call it more of a hexagon.
No, it's definitely a square. A hexagon implies we have 6 players on the ice.
Well, with
Doucette's in our
you,
hearts. Doucette's playing on our hearts. That's what's happened.
Rip Doucette. Is he dead? Is he he's
Rest
just
in
gone?
peace. Rest in peace.
He's only
He was-
in our hearts
yeah,
and our
only in
minds
our
now.
hearts. He's gone, but never forgotten. Rest in peace,
Jesus.
Doucette. 2015 to 2015. A moment of silence, please, for Doucette.
Oh my god. We're not doing a moment of silence for Doucette.
Wow. how
Anyway, so yeah,
disrespectful.
I agree with pretty much
Press
everything
F
you
to
said,
pay respects in
Dalfan.
chat, press F.
You looking, Mito's been a little bit up and down, a little bit more up than he has been down, I'd say. Not necessarily quite the performance he had last season, so I think there's still a bit of room for improvement there. I'm always highly critical of myself, so I'm not gonna even get into it because people sit there and are like, you score points. How can you be critical of yourself? And I don't understand how people think like that, but that's fine. So I think there's room for improvement across the board. I would agree with you that I think Dick Dug has been the primary reason why we've been winning games lately. I think Mito this past week was pretty great as well. After a little bit of I'm not going to say shaky first week, but maybe the week that wasn't quite as good as what we would have expected from him. So I thought he came back well, and I think. But whether it's been you or Pizza on offense, I think you guys have been performing perfectly fine. I don't think there's been any issues there, and I wouldn't necessarily say there's been any issues on our second defenseman either. I really think the problems we've been having that are sort of being masked by the luck we've been getting are more team-based and how we work together rather than necessarily any one individual underperforming, so to speak. Which is honestly a good problem to have. So
yeah, I would
Yeah.
say Meadshill's way more than what we could ask from him from this week. And then earlier he had a few hiccups, especially during the Quebec game to start us off. That was probably the down of his performance. Then came back really strong and really a low maintenance guy. Doesn't really demand that much in terms of warm ups but so that's just impressive within itself. But his stats are underrated in my opinion so far with this. He hasn't necessarily had a consistent defenseman or a defensive pairing. It's been kind of a question mark, and I've always been known to allow more shots when I'm playing defense, which is just really huge for him to be able to come back and take that load for us. I think between
Take our
him, load. That's not a euphemism for penis.
you
Load?
You can take our load? Yeah.
oh man,
Carry the load.
well his name is Carey, so
Load. Is he sharing the load, Dalfan?
He-
I'm just teasing.
he's playing very well on the whole. He's been very good lately, so I'm happy to see him performing that well, and hopefully we can get his goals against average down a little bit. And the team's goals against average. It'd be nice to get that down a little bit as well. So
I do actually remember Dick Dug told me in advance that he wouldn't make the 15th, so I will give him slack on that. So I forgot.
I can tell you a lot of dates actually right now, but we'll save that later after the foreskin forecast.
Well,
But
no,
anyway,
here are all the
Matt would
days you
show
could
up.
take advantage of us.
Here are the days when you want to play your top rosters against Dallas. By the way, they're all going to be on Sundays.
Oh my goodness.
Is it not going to be a team's not going to play their top players against us? Like,
Yeah, true.
Well,
They're
it's not
gonna bench their starters. Like we
I
don't
mean,
need to
like,
play
okay,
Lucic
like, here's a
today. Yeah,
prediction,
it's
like,
fine.
If we play Chicago,
Rest them.
Tommy's just gonna bench himself. He's also gonna bench Lucic, and just like we're gonna lose anyways. Might as well give the backups some chances to play here, and then we mercy them ain't nothing.
Oh my
I'm just saying,
goodness.
like, if I'm playing Philly and I hear in advance that Taze isn't going to be there, I'm not necessarily going to play that differently. Like, there's nothing I can do to plan ahead for that. Like, I might be more inclined
There's
to
only
do
there's
a
only
dump
so
and
much
chase, but
game planning like based on your opponent that goes on during the regular season. I don't think there's a whole lot of like opponent specific planning that teams do right now. Certainly not this early in the season anyway. Alright, that's all I got for Dalf. Unless
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Yeah, we've kind of talked about our performance. We haven't talked about the stats. Team's been playing fairly well. Dial's leading us offensively. Dolphins right there. Dick Dug 9 points. Good job, Dick Dug. High five. You guys can remember us high five myself. Pet the Peach is coming right behind me with 7 points, and then our backup's Tony and Doucette with 2 points. So all around, team's playing fairly well. Doucette's got a nice, respectable 62.50 save percentage right there. Slots in nicely third.
Great job by Doucette.
He's got the fortunately he's got the highest goals against average with 3.50. That's gonna hopefully go down once defense gets solid there. But he's doing pretty good. He's got the second highest. He's tied for time on ice right now with Cheese. So all around, I think the team's playing pretty well. He's got the highest saves, so that's the thing.
That's not necessarily a good thing. The highest saves also means highest shots against.
I mean,
usually.
I said that's
so.
a thing. I didn't say that's a good thing. I said
Yeah.
that's a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all.
Semyon Varlamov.
Okay.
Dalf, this
All right.
just in,
Thank you, Dalf, for
This
coming
just
on
in,
and
Dalf's
speaking
really
with us.
fucking salty about the things. The Avalanche. That's what it's called.
So
Did
yeah,
you guys do all 6 teams?
we're about
No,
to do
we
Philly.
haven't done.
Why? Are you annoyed?
Dalf wants to do
No.
a stat thing. He wants to do a stat thing. Say the stat thing, or you can say it until we're done Philly.
Like, we'll do Philly. It usually takes between like 8 and 10 minutes to do a specific team wrap up. So
I'll be right back.
if you can wait that long,
Nice. Tic Tac just bailed.
that's fine with me.
Alright, I'll be Dick Dug, okay?
Okay. We've got a fill-in
so
Dick
here's
Dug.
Philly. They've been doing pretty good for the whole season, yeah. What do you think about them, Dial?
It's stunningly accurate. Is that a cat?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a cat?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, these Dallas inside jokes. Nobody's gonna understand. See, people are gonna look back at this and like, this is why they think it's all a Dallas circle joke, because we just sit here and make fun of each other. And
Yeah. 'Cause yeah.
he's doing an amazing job. It's too good. It's too good of an impersonation.
Yeah, because like when that one time when I had the puck and then I was going down the ice and I shot it and it bounced over proper stick. And then I scored in all 6 games. Sorry,
oh
I
my
just
God.
keep going.
I need
Sorry,
a
I just
moment.
wanted to say the 6 game
I need a moment.
goal scoring streak. So
Oh my fucking God. I'm
Uh,
almost
also-
disappointed he's not here to hear this, because he'll never hear this. He'll never ever know that this went down.
also my playoff plus minus is just best on the team. So that's a thing.
Oh, it's like he never left. Okay. Okay, so the
Yeah,
the
keep going on
Flyers.
Philly,
So the Flyers. They have been pretty great to start this season. We mentioned earlier in the schedule their 2 sort of blip games where they only won by 1 goal against Tampa and Quebec, were the 2 bottom teams. So certainly leaves a little bit more to be desired. What timing? What timing? But they've been pretty great across the board. They're not quite the defensive powerhouse they were last season, but a lot of that stems from the fact that Zam has been playing offense with Jay Lalu, and Ace has been filling in on defense next to Taze, and they've got Briz in net now, so not really missing a beat so far, apart from the one game that we spoke about with Dalfan earlier against Dallas, where they just really weren't prepared for. And they weren't ready for Briz to AFK, and they didn't necessarily handle the situation overly well before or after it happened. So you can largely blame that for their 1 loss there. Obviously hard to tell how the game would have gone otherwise. So, but on the whole, they've been pretty great. They've got the top scorer right now in the league, Jay Lalu, who's been, I guess you would call him, he's not, I wouldn't necessarily say he's a breakout player, but at the same time, he kind of is. Like, he's always been up there.
He's been prolific. Like, he's been
Yeah.
a guy, like, he's been a goal scorer. This is really the first time he's been almost the guy on a team.
Yeah.
Almost at the same level as you are, Dial. Like, he is Philadelphia's goal scorer. And the reason why you want to call him a breakout player is because this is his first season doing that.
Yeah, and I mean that's why I want to like lump him into that category, even though it's not like he's ever been bad or anything like that. It's not like this is entirely out of nowhere. But I don't think anybody would have expected that 6 games in, Joe Alou would be leading the league in points, and you have to give him all sorts of credit for that. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that he and Zam are finally playing offense together, which is something that they've been doing in pub games for almost 6 or 7 months now. You see, like, almost every night they're in pub games playing together on offense, and they do incredibly well. So I'm not that surprised to see it translate, because the chemistry there is already developed. And they're working with Taze on defense, who's exactly the same defenseman they had last season. So, and Ace is slotted in really well, and the change in goalie hasn't proved to be that big of a difference at all. So it's certainly about what you would expect, I guess, but maybe not necessarily quite this dominant or quite this, I don't even know how to say it, offensive, I guess.
Yeah,
I would have expected a bit of a more defensively minded team, just like we saw last season, and yet here they are, and they have the most goals in the league.
What's their goals against, though? How many goals do they have against, though? That's the thing.
They're only allowing 2.83 goals against,
that's good.
which is really good. It's
okay.
best in the league. So
I think it's I like, along with a lot of people, expected Philadelphia to be like the defensive team to have a goals against average,
which they are. Let's not get off that. They are. They definitely are.
No
Just if you compare it to last season, like last season, Philly struggled to score goals.
And if you scored more than 3 goals against them, you were almost guaranteed to win the game because they didn't have the offense. Now, like, they can play with anyone.
Exactly, and they've been dominant, to say the least. So they're looking at it last season, they were averaging like 5.5 shots against per game by this point in the season, and they were 6-0. So it's a bit of a different team, I guess, despite the fact that the players are largely the same. There's a different mindset going into it, where like, hey, let's go out there and score some fucking goals. And they're doing that. And I think you'll start to see them come back to earth a little bit there. Just because you look at their shot percentage, and it's 53.7% right now, which is astronomically high. That's like 10% higher than just about any other team usually winds up with towards the end of the season. So to keep a shot percentage that high is probably unrealistic. So I'd expect to see them back off a little bit, and to sort of clarify a little bit like what it would mean if they were shooting at like 10% less, about 43%, which is the average. They'd have about 25 goals, 26 goals. So they would have lost 3 or 4 goals throughout the course of the season, which might have been enough to lose them another game, maybe one of those 2 1-goal games that they finished against Quebec and Tampa. So I think we will see a bit of a drop from them there, from that perspective, but I don't expect to see anything change from them defensively. Like, I don't think they're necessarily going to get any worse on defense. They're only going to get better the more they understand how to play together. So certainly a team to be feared, and I think it would be wrong to not pick them as the favorite right now to win it all if we were to have the playoffs today. So, but we saw how quickly that changed last season. They went from 6-0 to being 3rd/4th seed by the end of the regular season, and they went on a really rough streak in the middle of the season there. So yeah, so we'll see what happens with them. But I expect big things, as I think most people do at this point. So, and that'll bring us to whatever point Dalfan wanted to make here.
Huh?
Your stat, the stat you want to talk about it.
What thing?
I don't know. Dick Doug said you had a thing you wanted to talk about.
I don't know what Dick Doug's talking about. I don't have anything.
Oh, fucking please. Dalfan, I believe you have a stat thing to talk about. Let's go. Come on, kid.
Alright, so we're seeing something weird going on in the league right now in terms of a change or a gust of new stats, a different rate of shots per game for every team and for the league on a league-wide basis. The whole rate of play that's going on is much higher than we've seen in the past. And we're seeing more shots per game. We're seeing faster games. I'm not sure that I can say objectively that the games are faster per se in terms of like going back and forth. and playing less of a clogged system. I can't say that objectively, but what I can tell you is that on a league average right now, um, for season 7, we saw a 7.89 shots per game for every team. That was the average for any given game. So you would see about 15 shots per game, a little over 15 shots per game, and for any given team, the nearly 7.9. And this season, we're actually seeing it almost 9 shots per game for every team. We're sitting at 8.83 team average for shots. So what that means is that for every game, and granted, we've only played 6 games for each team, but for those 6 games, we're seeing a much faster paced game. We're seeing nearly 18 shots per game, and we're seeing one more shot per team for every game that's played. It's really interesting that maybe it's a shift. When you look at some of the personnel that's left, and defensemen has become more and more scarce as the league has gone on, and that's something we knew kind of going into the draft, was that defensemen were going to be more valuable, and it was the same thing in season 8. But even now, it's becoming even more prevalent with the departure of Sammy, and I can't necessarily list off any others that really come to mind. But when you look at the D pairings in the league, even Zam and Taser, and granted, I'm not sure what Zam's doing right now, whether it's ace on
He's a
defense, but
forward. Yeah, it's
I know
Ace been
it's
playing defense for them this season.
so that's gone back and forth, and I think Zam played 1 or 2 games on defense at some point.
Yeah, he has.
So when you look at season 8 for the Philadelphia Flyers, they had a 6.83 shots against per game, which was obviously the best in the league by far for that season, and might be one of the best in terms of 5v5. I don't know if you can verify that. I
It's up
can't
there.
recall.
It was either first or second best ever in 5v5, and
Mhm.
if you want to count 4v4 too, it would have been like up there in 4v4.
So that's Philly for season 8, and now they've shifted, and Ace is on the D pair, and you've got Taze still, and now they're giving up nearly 8 shots against per game, and they're at 7.83 to be exact, which is like would be about average. If that team was season 8, if that team was there, they would be an average team in terms of shots against. But this season, they're the best team in terms of shots against, which is crazy to think about. That it's the same personnel. You've got a change in defense, so I guess you can expect there to give up an additional shot for every, with Ace replacing Zam. So, but still, the fact that they are the league leading or league lowest shots against per game, and if they were in the season prior, they would be average. And then obviously you got Tampa with D-Man, Jerry, and Crab, or Dr. Grams, whoever is playing. They're giving up a league high 9.83, and I can't compare that to the previous season per se, because they weren't starting on an LHL team. But for Dallas, it's me and Dick Doug. We're giving up 9.33. And that's higher than it was for us last season, and we had Trev Crow and whoever else, me really. So I guess for the regular season, you could make that comparison. We were gonna have 7.5 last season with that combination, and now we're giving up even more. So here's an example. I mean, you can't make that analysis for Philly because they've got different personnel, but for us, I played 18 regular season games, 5 of which were in net, so 13 games, about more than half, and Dick Doug played a large majority as well. And so you have the same players, you have a different forward, but even then our forwards changed a lot throughout the season. So those 2 defensemen, same players, are giving up more shots in this league against these opponents than they were against season 8 opponents. So you're just seeing a much faster game. Same with McJaba and Evkov. They're giving up 9. Those are 2 really highly coveted defensemen. A defensive pairing that's like, it has certainly to be reckoned with. Now, with that being said, maybe I'm not giving enough credit for the forwards that are on that pair, on that line, how much of an impact forwards can have on your defense. But Johnny Hockey and Go Leafs Go. Now you have a forward playing defense. They're going to up 8.83, and then Trev Crow and Gabe, they're going to up 8.67. So a much more shots against, that we're seeing a faster game, more shots off the rush, I think, and all around less emphasis on defense. And then that bodes itself also in the goals against per game, or goals for per game, whatever you want whatever scope you want to look at it. But last season we're looking about 3.35 goals per game for nearly 7 total in any given game. Now we're sitting at 3.8 goals per game for any given team. 3.8. And so an increase of nearly 0.5, half a goal. We're seeing an additional goal for every team, additional total goal for the whole game. So we're seeing more goals, more shots, and all around a faster game. Just an interesting trend that I noticed so far in the 6 times 6, so 36 games 36 then divided by 2. So 18 games that we played so far.
Yep, 18.
Just more high pace, emphasis on offense so far.
Yeah, and I sort of spoke to this a little bit early on in the show, how I thought that we're going to see sort of a decline in that as teams start to figure things out defensively, because I think, again, offensive chemistry is easier to develop than defensive chemistry is, and defensive chemistry really comes from the entire team, whereas you can get by with all your offense coming from 2 players, or 1 player even. And I think a team like Chicago is a good example of that right now. Where, we spoke about it with them, the only person who's scored a whole lot of points outside of Lucic and Tall is Kadri, or Leafs, who has 6 points, and the other 2 have 14 and 15 each, respectively. So I think it's going to be some time before you see teams sort of figure out how to adapt to this newer, faster style of game that we've sort of seen adapt and develop here over the past, we'll say over the past season. I think we started to move this way last season, but I think, as you pointed out, the lack of experience, and I'm not going to say talented, because the talent is certainly still there, but really the lack of experience, I guess, is the one thing that's the driving force here in defensemen, is causing a lot of these issues, and it's especially putting a lot of pressure on goalies, and that's why I think you're seeing goalies who are struggling a lot more than they normally would. Save percentages are lower, goals against averages are higher, which makes sense given everything else. So there's a lot of external pressure there now on the defense and goalie position that weren't there a season ago.
And
Just like go Dalfan, go.
We can't necessarily look at, say, the shots per game because we lost that revision history, but you could probably find maybe a similar trend I don't think on a level like this, to where we're seeing an additional goal per game. It does
tend to slow down. That's something I had looked at before, and I meant to do a write-up about it last season at some point, but I never did. And like you said, I don't have the revision history to do it anymore, but it is a trend that usually teams start off hot offensively throughout the league, and then it trails off a little bit as we get farther into the league. The levels of shots go down, levels of goals go down, but not necessarily by enough to account for the sheer difference we're seeing right now between where we were at the end of last season and where we are now.
I thought Dick Doug might have something to say after I interrupted him.
No, sorry. You can put a lot of stats down to the veterans and new people going into positions they weren't expected with, and skill levels changing. But I think we're seeing everyone at this point everyone's adjusted. Everyone knows how to play 5v5. Excuse me. And now everyone's just perfecting the system. Everyone's just crafting fine tuning their craft as if it were, of how to play 5v5, and I think we're gonna see stats change, and we're gonna see a lot of new stats come into play as the season goes on and as seasons go on in 5v5. That's my bit right there.
I would agree. And you didn't end that with Dick Doug as the best defenseman. I kind of expected you to throw that in there, point out that you've scored a goal in the last 4 games or something. I'm kind of disappointed that you didn't.
Every single game I've played, I've gotten a goal in. That's a thing.
Oh, jeez.
I just want to point that out. I've got 2 game goals back to back.
We're all just lucky to be graced with your presence.
Honestly, I don't know why the fuck I don't go first overall. I'm a fucking covenant item. You guys, I should get walking down the street, people should be bowing to me. I'm just not fucking good at winning games.
Oh boy. Okay. Dalfan, do you want to stick around and do predictions with us for next week?
No, we
Have you guys
change it-
set it up for a middle, a third
It's
person?
already set up.
Yeah, the foreskin forecast coming right up. So change your name to like some other bum who's not Dalfan, and like not on.
That way
Dallas
you
Brothers,
can.
not me.
That way you can pick Dallas games.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Fortunately not. Okay, so I'll read them off to you here. I mean, we don't have show notes this time, so I can't even like link you show notes to look at. Thank you, Dalfan. I'm sorry, but so first game on Sunday. Getting into the predictions here. The what did we call it? Foreskin
The
forecast.
foreskin forecast. Right? There you go.
Thank you for the lovely intro music. So first game of the week on Sunday is going to be Philly versus Tampa. They played each other, I think it was the very first week of the season, and it was a 1-goal game, 5-4, and that was a game led by Dildozer, actually. Dildozer got a hat trick that game, scored the game-winning goal. I think he's only played one game since, did not do quite as well. He may have gotten like a point or so, but he was a driving force behind the win in that game. But certainly a game that was much closer than I think anybody anticipated. Do you guys think we're going to see a repeat of that, or is Philly going to just blow it out of the water? Dick, we'll go with you first.
I think Philly's gonna win it. I would love to see Tampa come back and win it, but I don't. It's gonna be a close game. I just don't think Sunday night is when they start to come back from it. I think Tuesday night is when they make their comeback, and I believe Philadelphia's gonna take this game.
Okay, Dalf.
Dick Doug here.
What the fuck?
I think Philly's gonna take this one for sure. They're gonna take it easily. 6-0. Philly
Did not
over
say 6-0.
Tampa. I don't see Tampa taking this one. They've been losing so many lately. It's got to be easy decision for to pick Philly here. What about you, Dial?
I don't want to do this to my Tampa friends. I really don't. I believe in you guys, but I think, you know, if you were a betting man, I think you'd go with Philly here, just given how both these teams have played so far. I think the one game certainly says a lot of how close it was. But again, the fact that they had Dildozer there playing in that game shows that they didn't have their full lineup, which obviously takes away a lot from that. Zam was on defense for that game, I believe. So a lot of that J. Lalu, Zam offensive chemistry that's been such a dominant factor so far wasn't there, and I don't think you're going to see that this time around. I think all the attendance is going to be there, and we're going to see Philly win yet another game that is fairly one-sided. I'm going to predict 5-2. It's the final score of that game. So we'll skip over the Dallas-Quebec game, and since Dick Doug's gone, I was going to go to him first, but we'll go to Dalfan first. No, it's too late. We're going to Dalfan first. So Dick Doug doesn't get to make a pick here. Pittsburgh versus Chicago. Chicago is 1-0 in the series, and they are up by 3 goals. They outscored them 5-2 or 6-3. Forget what the score was that game. Dalfan, who do you think is going to win? Pittsburgh, Chicago?
I have a hard time saying that Pittsburgh. I have a hard time saying that Chicago would lose this because of how they've been playing. However, they did get kind of blown out of the building against Philadelphia, and I could kind of see maybe it not coming together for Chicago, especially say if PK's not there or PK has lag. And you see Gabe wheel some stuff. I kind of see an upset here for Chicago, or excuse me, for Pittsburgh upsetting Chicago. I think they really did put together a fair performance, but I guess it all depends on how they're able to rebound from a tough week, a tough 2 games on Thursday after that scrim. If they can hold the band, come together. It also depends on how Gabe responds, whether he tries to get back at Timu for how he treated him by benching him for Mr. U, or if he puts differences aside and basically says, let's put our best roster out there and see what we can do. But I think that with all that being said, I think that Chicago will win this one, but it'll be a high-scoring affair of not necessarily too high-scoring, but 4-3 in favor of Chicago in overtime.
Okay. I would have predicted the upset for Pittsburgh here, had things not gone so poorly for Pittsburgh after the scrim. I think there's going to be some internal issues there, which aren't going to be entirely worked through, and I think you're going to see that come to light in their play on Sunday. I know they'll probably have their starters, and I know Gabe has pointed out several times that they have not lost when they had all their starters there. So certainly something to consider. So I do think there's still upset potential there, and again, I would pick it, but I think there's going to be those off the ice issues, which are going to be an underlying issue, again, a problem. We'll go with that. Underlying problem for them throughout the entirety of that game, and I think that's going to come back and ultimately be the reason why they're not able to top Chicago in this game. Dick Doug?
Alright, so my prediction on this one here, it's it's gonna be, Chicago's gonna win this one easily. Yep, Chicago's got it.
Great analysis.
Yeah, okay, alright, so Chicago is a better team. I feel there's gonna be some attendance issues, there's gonna be some problems in the locker room. I just feel Chicago is a better team, it's a better group together, they're better as a team, personality-wise, and they're better as a team skill-wise. I mean, Cheese can play Nina. No, PK's back on the team. So PK's gonna, there's gonna be the goaltending battle of PK and Cheese. That's gonna be there. The defense is, I think the defense is about even on both teams, but I think Chicago's offense can just work together better. I think Talmadge and Lucic are playing fantastic together, and Gleaves playing that, second, the defenseman and the third forward is also working out well for them. That's why Chicago's gonna take that game. I think it's gonna be maybe a 5-2, 4-3 kind of, a 4-1 kind of game.
5-3 to 4-1. You went 5-3, 4-2, 4-1. That was your progression there.
There's gonna be some space.
There's gonna be some space. All right, you heard it here first, guys. There's gonna be some space. Dick Dick's not happy with me for saying that.
Pardon?
Oh my goodness. Nothing, Dick Dick. Nothing at all. Dick Dick, we'll throw nothing. We'll throw it back to you. Tampa versus Quebec on Tuesday. You gonna give a prediction? Or you gonna sit there and be salty?
I didn't know. Okay, yeah, sure. I'm gonna go with Tampa here. I think Tampa's gonna Claude's gonna step up. They're gonna lead that team, and I think Matt's attendance is still gonna be a problem here. Tampa's gonna play better than them, and Tampa's gonna want to bounce back after their succession of losses from this past week, and they're just gonna, I think Tampa takes that game. Yep, Tampa's gonna take it.
They're gonna take it. They're gonna take it.
They're gonna take it.
Tampa's gonna take it. I'm saying Quebec. I'm saying Quebec Matt is going to show up. That's my prediction. Matt shows up. I know we predicted this last week. We each took a turn. You, me, and Hippo predicted this last week, and we failed on all of them because he never showed up. But I think Matt's going to show up here, and I think this is going to be the game that really puts Tampa on the spot where they're now, assuming here based on the way we picked, they're now 1-7, and they're forced to make some really serious decisions. And I think this is the point where you make or break their season after this game, and this will be the way that everything plans out. Might be a battle for 6th seed, and this might be a game that's impossible to come back from if they're broken down mentally. So I think this is the tipping point for them. I think Matt shows up. I think Tampa's luck continues to be awful, and they draw the Matt stick just like we drew the Matt stick week 1. And I think Quebec comes out and they win this game. I'm gonna say 6-4. I'm gonna say 6-4 for that game. So, Dalfan?
Well, here's the deal, ladies and gents. When it comes to Tampa versus Quebec. Quebec is a better team when they have Matt there. Quebec is a better team than Tampa when they don't. So this is a no-brainer, really, to take Quebec here. They're just flat out the better team, even though they are 1-5 the same. Their games have been closer. They're generating nearly 8 shots per game, as opposed to Tampa, which is closer to 6. It's gonna be easy for KS Auto to be able to work some stuff. McJava's gonna be able to wheel, as opposed to, especially with the acquisition of Not Led for Quebec, they're just gonna be able to really get their train rolling against Tampa. And Tampa right now is in a really tough spot defensively and offensively, and it's a going both ways. So, like I said, whether Matt shows up or not, Quebec will still win.
Okay, I think the one thing I would bring up to sort of counter that argument, again, I know I picked Quebec here, but I did it on the basis of Matt being there. When these two teams squared off last time, you saw a hat trick from Claude, you saw 3 straight assists from Kapanen, and you saw a shutout from Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay had all of their other, Quebec had all their other starters there outside of Matt. So Tampa handled them fairly well in the head-to-head matchup. So whether or not Quebec is a better team, at least in the head-to-head, Tampa's so far proven that they're more successful. Again, in that head-to-head matchup. So we'll see. I'm not as confident about that as you are. So we'll keep it on you though for Philly versus Pittsburgh, the Pennsylvania Showdown. Second time it's happening this season. Pittsburgh lost the first matchup. So, Dalfan, what do you think is going to happen this time around?
Philly has the best defense in the league, and Pittsburgh's a very easy team to shut down on their breakouts, and so Pittsburgh won't be able to get anything going. Easiest prediction I've made all week.
Jesus.
Oh my God.
It'll be 5-1 Philly, and the 1 goal will come from Gabe off the rush.
Jesus.
Off of a breakout wheel.
Dick Duck.
He dekes the whole team.
Dick Duck. You care to be as savage as Dalfan just was?
I'm gonna pick Philadelphia on this one too. I'm not gonna say that it's gonna be the easiest prediction of my life. There is some doubt. I mean, I bet people doubted that we would beat Philadelphia as handily as we did. There could be the chance where they are not set up the way they were. Sorry, they could be set up the same way they were when they played us. They could just not be ready to face the game. Who knows? Timu, Gabe could have they could have some nice chim going on here. Who knows? But yeah, I'm gonna pick Philadelphia here. I think Philadelphia takes this one. I'm not gonna say 4-1. I'm gonna say maybe 4-2, maybe even 2-1. It might be like it's like a low scoring affair.
I'm going off the board here. I'm going with Pittsburgh.
Oh, damn.
I think this is a game where if you have Gabe and Trev Crow playing together on defense, and they take Jay Lalu and Zam seriously and give them as much attention as they would give anyone else, I think that they can actually win this matchup. I think Trev Crow and Gabe, again, if they play as if they're playing against Matt and Lucic or DMB or whoever, I think if they treat it like that sort of situation and they work really hard to shut down Philly's offense, I think they'll be able to break down Philly's defense through repeated rushes over and over again. And I think this is the game where you start to see Philly sort of come back down a little bit to sort of a level that we maybe expected from them. And it's nothing to say if there's anything wrong with Philly right now, but I think you'll start to see sort of a balance there. And I think Pittsburgh's going to be one of the first teams to really truly show a weakness in Philly that we haven't seen yet so far this season. So there's my upset of the week.
That's the upset of the week. All right, I'm it's happening. It could happen.
I think they have a better chance of beating Philly than they do of beating Chicago. Which might sound weird to say, because I think they, on paper, might match up a little bit better against Chicago. But I think stylistically, I think they'll have more success against Philly than they're going to have against Chicago. And I think
That's
a big
weird.
part of that will be that they'll be able to maintain more puck possession against Philly than they will against Chicago.
That's weird.
So I'm standing by that. And coming to Thursday, we've got Tampa versus Pittsburgh. And I'll start this one off. I think Pittsburgh rides their upset win over Philly, and I think they're going to win this game as well. Again, very sorry to Tampa fans, Tampa players. I hate picking against K-Bomb especially. I love you, K-Bomb, with K-Bomb. But I think you guys are going to continue to struggle, and I think you're going to face a team that's coming in hot off their win and is going to come in strong. And I think it'll be a somewhat of a close game, but I think they're going to be able to outscore anything that Tampa is going to be able to put forward, Pittsburgh that is. So, and I think Pittsburgh will win this game 6-5 or 6-4.
Ooh, alright, bold prediction, Connor.
Higher scoring game, I'm saying. Higher scoring game than the Philly game is. I think Philly game is low scoring between them, and I think the Tampa game is high scoring. So, Dick Doug?
I'm gonna go with Pittsburgh on this one here. Actually, no, I know. Know what? I'm gonna go with my heart. I'm gonna say Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay takes this game. I think Tampa Bay, I think Claude Giroux makes a nice solid performance, shuts down Gabe and Timu. I'm gonna go bold. I'm gonna say he gets a hat trick in this game. I'm gonna hype Claude up here. I'm gonna say he gets a hat trick. K-Bomb is phenomenal in goal, and they get their wheels rolling again, and they beat Pittsburgh. And I think it's gonna be high scoring. I think it's gonna be high scoring as well.
Okay, Dalfan?
It's gonna be another win for Pittsburgh. I mean, obviously they didn't win the last game according to my prediction, but maybe another win for Pittsburgh isn't the right diction. Rather, another loss for Tampa Bay Lightning.
Another win in this series. They're 1-0 in the series, and they're got a +5 goal differential. So
that's what I'm looking at. Was the 6-1 win for them, and they just came with a more well-rounded performance, and I think that comes from the way that you break out when you are trying to make passing plays in the defensive zone, trying to break stuff out, and you're playing a team like that. Between Gabe and Timu, they're just going to kind of steal it from you and be able to deke your team when you're not getting pucks deep. So I think that's kind of what's going to happen. It's going to be a factor of that, and Pittsburgh will be able to continue on their mediocre, good performance followed by bad performance followed by a 50-50 record.
Okay, Dick Doug? I'm going to turn to you for Quebec and Chicago. Last game, so predictions?
I'm going to predict Matt. Matt's going to make a rare appearance this game. He's going to show up, and I think this is going to be a nice grudge match between these two teams. I'm going to say the score's going to be 7-5, but I think Chicago comes out on top.
Oh my god, I thought you were going to go with Quebec.
Yep, you thought I did, but Chicago goes on top. It's going to be 7-5. Matt's going to get at least 3 points that night. But I think just the combination of talent that you need to change that thing very much.
It's already changed.
Thank you, but the combination of Chicago's talent it's too much for Matt to carry over. They're gonna shut him down. And they're gonna beat him.
Delph?
This is a high-scoring affair when they met last time, 7-5 for Chicago, and that was without Matt. And so you got maybe a 50-50 game in that. Let's say 7-5 high scoring, could have gone either way, and that's without Matt. So when I'm looking at it from a statistical point of view, for my predictions, if you got it maybe a 30% chance of Matt showing up, plus the fact that the game was pretty close without him, I got to go with Quebec here. And I think Chicago is kind of overrated right now. They obviously picked up that win over us early in the season. I don't think we were playing that great then, and beyond that. They've picked on some lower tier teams, I guess, Mercy and Tampa, but from then on, they lost by a goal differential of 5 to Philly. I don't think they're as good of a team as the standings would say, and so Quebec, which is a team that's just been so close so many times so far this season without Matt, they get a couple appearances by Matt, and they have a good 2-1 season or 2-1 week, excuse me. And so Quebec over Chicago, 5-4.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go with Dick Dug. I think Chicago's gonna win this one. I don't think Matt's gonna show up. Even if he does, I'm actually kind of leaning towards Dick Dug again, where I think Chicago has enough to be able to overcome him. I think the team has not played enough with him, as in Quebec has not played enough with him, that they're going to necessarily be 100% across the board in terms of their team play once he's there, because they're just at this point they're played 5 games now without him, so they're more used to not having him there than him being there, and I think his impact would be big if he shows up. But I think Chicago is a hot team right now. I mean, they're doing well. Dalfan, you said you believe they're overrated a little bit, but I think when you look at the other teams in the league, I don't know that they're necessarily overrated. I think they're right around where they belong, all things considered. And I think they have all the talent in the world necessary to win this game. And this is going to be a really interesting one given the trades that just went down. It's going to be Nina and Notled looking to prove that they're worth more than Chicago thought they were. So I think they're going to come out hard. They're going to play well, whether or not Matt is there. But I think you're going to see something similar, maybe not as high scoring, but a similar result where Chicago is going to pull out a close victory. And that'll do it. That'll wrap up our predictions. So those are the 6 games, the 6 non-Dallas games. So that's pretty much all I got here for this show.
What does the winner get?
Nothing but bragging rights. Like Dick Dug beat me by 1 game last season on the whole.
You had to beat him.
Yeah, I have to beat him this time around. So we're not doing great on our predictions so far. We're
you'd have to beat him.
If you look at our predictions from last week, we did not do so hot. I think Dick Dug, I think you and I ended up 2-4 each.
Oh jeez.
I'm looking at this now. 1-1, 0-2. Man, both 1-2 there. 2-2. 3-2. Oh, okay. It wasn't as bad as I thought we were. Okay. So I did beat you last week, Dick Dug, so just remember that. Just remember that in the future. I'm looking forward to building on this lead. And let's see, how did Hippo do? Hippo was 1-2 on Sunday. He was 2-1 on Tuesday. So that puts him at 3-3, and then on Thursday he was 2-1. So Hippo went what 5-4 last week, so not bad. Not bad. It's pretty good, especially for somebody who hasn't really been involved in the LHL at all this season. So, and we'll keep track of Dalf's as well. We'll see how Dalf does. Make fun of him when he gets all his predictions wrong.
6-0.
We'll see about that. Alright, thanks to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to everyone who participated in the chat. Thanks to Gabe, thanks to Dalfan. We didn't have anybody else on, did we, Dick Dug?
Gabe.
Gabe and Dalfan.
Don't forget Gabe.
Gabe?
Gabe was
Gabe.
on.
Thank you to Gabe, especially Gabe.
Don't forget
Dalfan.
A special thank you to Cap.
Damn.
Special thank you to Cap for riding the Tampa Bay bench when no one else wanted to.
Before we head out, I just wanna say a couple things BG's actually pointed out in chat. One, he said that we should make our predictions beforehand, so we're not influenced by each other. I also said that requires being organized, so that's probably not gonna happen. And then BG also just pointed out that we should have our predictions below our portraits, like our records. But yeah.
Yeah, that's something we can do.
Mm-hmm.
We used to do the predictions beforehand. I used to get them from you guys before the show started.
Like the first fucking episode.
Yeah, I think we did it for the first 2.
First 2?
We did it for the first 2, but there really isn't much coordination between Dick Dug and I during the week on what we're going to talk about. It's a lot of like
it's so unorganized.
It's a lot of like I write down like 6 pages of thoughts and then never send it to Dick Dug until showtime, and then we just go. So
like the first 3 episodes, I was like, yeah, where the notes, and then he finally sent to me. But after that, I realized that he wasn't gonna send me them until it began. So I was like, there's fucking no point.
Even then, like half the time I forget to.
I
So
haven't gotten them right now. Like I haven't seen them in the past
we didn't have
3
any for this
episodes.
week.
Yeah.
We didn't have any for this week. We had them for
Rest
last
in peace,
week. But
Fallout 4.
yeah, there isn't generally as much coordination between the two of us as there maybe used to be in terms of prep for the show. So that's why you don't see the predictions early on. Also, we haven't had a true guest host yet. Both Dalfan and Hippo were sort of like during the show additions, so neither of those would have been.
Love me.
Neither of those would have been people we could have gotten early predictions from anyway. So the only reason we had them there is just because they happened to be here during the prediction time. So it wasn't something that was necessarily planned. I don't think Dick, Doug, and I actually like let each other sway our opinions of the game, but still, we probably should do it beforehand. I'm not gonna promise that just because I know how we are with this show and the lack of coordination there usually is. So, but in terms of like showing the records, we probably could do that. I don't think that would be overly difficult to do. Maybe like a week by week thing when look at our record last week. So. There are a decent amount of things that I'd love to do more overlays for. Like as an example, the stuff we talked about with Dalfan today. We used to talk about things like that in our special like ending segment a lot of the time, and most of the time we had no visual aid for that. And I'd love to get visual aids for more of that. The problem is that it takes time to make them, and it's very hard to go through and micromanage everything during the show while also, being a host for the show. So it's not something that I also am going to promise because it's a lot to manage. It's a lot to manage and do on a show-to-show basis. If we're doing just the prediction stuff, then yeah, we can probably get that going. I don't necessarily see why not. So I'll try and set that up for next week. If not next week, the week after that, we'll get something going for that. But too much outside of that, I'd love to get more, but it's just too much to do. It's too much time, and it's time that I don't want to spend working on this any more than I have to. So, given everything else that I usually have to do as well. So, anyway, so thank you for everybody for tuning in. Thanks for the suggestions, BG. I'm always open to criticism like that. So if anybody else has anything, please let us know, because we want to improve the show. We want to make it better as best we can anyway. So
I don't.
Other than Dalfan, the rest of us do. So thank you guys.